great. Okay, great. Welcome, everybody. It is 6:30, and we will begin the meeting. My name is Sue DePisa, and I am on Economic Development, and this is the subcommittee, a subcommittee of EDC to study sidewalks. And this is a public forum for the purpose of to update the public on the progress of the recent sidewalk planning and construction and current work to identify and prioritize potential sidewalk projects in Situate. We also want to seek public input on additional projects that support safe and connected pedestrian routes through the community. So there are two things that we will not be talking about tonight. It's not under our purview, is the discussion of the project costs or the implementation timelines. It's outside of our charge. So there are 4 people on the committee, along with Nico as the liaison from the select board. So me, Sue, Donna, and Mark, and Andy is online because he is somewhere else. We don't know where he is, but he's here. So if we want to go right into number 2, Donna, about explaining the basic history and the process.
Yeah, I'm Donna Hamill, and I guess this all started, the genesis is back in the summer of 2022. I live in Old Farm, and so Hatherley Road was a big concern to me, trying to walk to the beach, as Sheila just mentioned. So I went down to the town and I asked about, what do you need to do to get something going? And one of the engineers said, well, the best thing to do is go get a petition going and, bring it to the Board of Selectmen. I said, okay, sounds like fun. So I spent most part of the summer collecting, but I went door to door all the way up and down from Egypt Beach to Gannett Road, and then walked the beaches in the summer and all that good stuff, and got 300 signatures that were in favor of the a sidewalk. So we put together a presentation. I worked with Sue at that point in time, and she and I went in front of the Board of Selectmen in October of 22, gave them our nice big binder and all the information, and they said, wow, yeah, this is pretty good, but we have no budget and we haven't really thought about this. We'll take it under advisement and we'll get back to you. Well, that was in 2022, and not a lot happened, and we actually got very frustrated, and Sue got super frustrated, and so she started stirring the pot again just recently. But in the research that I had done, I did find there was, back in 2007, there was a sidewalk study done specifically for the town by a group of individuals and some town employees. Very extensive, very thorough. They came up with a lot of different criteria as to what qualified as most important, and a lot of that has to do with connecting streets that have sidewalks and destination routes and things like that. So there you had the whole bulk of a real solid study. And then in 2016, I found a complete street policy that was adopted by the Board of Selectmen that acknowledged all of that study plus a lot of other things. And basically it said it wanted to do a town-wide initiative to really bring all the different forces together. So in essence, a whole managed approach to pedestrian safety, bike safety, all of the things, including trails and all that. One of the implementation points that they made was to form a committee to do this, work and follow it through, because the original study had listed a number of different streets that they recommended. And from that time in 2007 to current time, some of those streets actually got done, like Countryway and a bunch of others. So when I finally got back to them, and I said, what about this committee? Who's on this committee? Because we should really be speaking with them. And thus we found there never was a committee formed. It fell through the cracks. And so obviously there was a lot of stuff that just went unattended, and budgeting wasn't done and everything else. So long story short, with the help of Andrew Goodrich and Nico, newly elected and really of great support, they were able to put us back together again and get us formally approved as the subcommittee of the EDC, work with us to keep us on, point to develop a list of recommendations as far as streets. And so we physically went out and looked at all the streets and took all the data down and compiled what we thought is a beginning list of what we think are important streets to consider. And so here we are. We're at this public hearing to advise you now of what we came up with, how we think we need to go forward, and also to get more information and feedback from people like yourselves who may need and see other streets that, because it's a big task and we're only like 4 little people working, and I'm full time. So anyway, that's how we got here. That's the genesis of it and the history. And I hope that we can make something really happen going forward.
Great, thank you, Donna. Mark, do you want to?
Sure.
Do we have to share the screen? Because I'm not.
We don't have to, because
Okay.
everybody, you should all have a copy of this. If not, there's a pile of copies of it.
But do you want to share that
Share
online
that.
for the people that are online? There are a
Yeah.
number of people
I
online.
need to grab it.
I'll fill for time while you're trying to get it up there.
Yeah, good. Is that in my email?
This, it's in the.
Thank you.
Do you have access to the folder?
Oh, it's
The
in
Dropbox.
It's in the
Dropbox.
Before we get started talking about this specifically, I just want to reiterate something that Donna said. I mean, the whole reason this meeting is occurring tonight is really, when I think about it, there's 2 reasons for being here. We're informing and we're inviting. Probably the biggest part of that, as far as you all are concerned, maybe is the invitation part. We're inviting you to provide input. So we may show something that, has colored on at the top of the, at least of the official copy of it. And that may indicate or potentially indicate that, gee, that's a final piece of paper. I'm getting to the party late. You're not. This is what we're here to show you, and this is the informed part. We're here to show you what we've done so far. But as Donna said, and she's absolutely right, I mean, we know our parts of the town. We may not know your parts of the town. You probably came to the meeting and it said sidewalks at the top, and you thought, I'm going to go there because, heck, my neighborhood needs a sidewalk, or there's one already there that needs repair. So we're inviting you to provide that kind of input. We'll get to how to do that before we close tonight. But I just wanted to make sure that was something that we're being very clear about. As Donna also laid out, and I don't want to repeat everything she's already said because she did it better than I will, but that 2007 report, I think all of us who looked at it said, well, we shouldn't throw that report out the window. That committee did a very good job of kind of coming up with a logical way of thinking about how the town is laid out, coming up with criteria that could be used to kind of compare and contrast, maybe even set priorities, because, let's face it, we're not going to be able to, the town can't do all of this in 1 year. So this is going to be a multi-year kind of activity if it happens. But so we've tried to apply a bit of a fresh start. We took a look at the 2007 report. We did our own drive around to find out, okay, since 2007, how many of those recommendations have been implemented? Turns out there were 20 recommendations of projects made in that report, and about 50% of them have been implemented since then. From my perspective, having grown up in a small town, that's not too bad. It's not complete, it's not 100%, it's not even 75%, but it's something. So we have taken a look at the ones that have not been addressed yet since 2007, and you'll find they're incorporated into this list. We've also, again, through our own lenses, added about 8 or 9 others to that list. So the total list we're working with, the draft list that we're working with right now, has 18 projects on it. There's going to be a separate list that deals, these are all new projects that would be recommended. There's also a lot of sidewalk square footage around town that could use repairs. And that needs to be addressed in its own way, kind of in parallel with this, and it will be. That's part of the charge that this committee has. As far as, again, what lens we're looking through, there are a number of things that we've been trying to address as we look at the various streets. The first one is what I'll call continuity. There are many, as you can see in the blue highlighting on these maps when you come up and take a look at them. There are existing sidewalks in town, you know that, but there are gaps from one sidewalk to the next sidewalk. So when we talk about continuity, one of the things that we're thinking about is, if we fill in a space between this section of sidewalk and another section of sidewalk, does that complete the path? Does that create some continuity from point A to point B? So that's one thing that we've been talking about. Another thing that we've been talking about is what I'll call walkability. In other words, is there a good pedestrian pathway to get from where you may be to an important place, like a school, like a recreational area, like a business area, and there are many others. We're certainly not trying to limit it to those 3 factors. So that's been among the conversation that we've been having as well. And then the last thing I'll mention, which probably should have been the first thing, is safety. A lot of us, myself included, you think of safety right away when you think about sidewalks, and in particular where there are not currently sidewalks. Maybe there's an existing safety issue right now that a new sidewalk could take care of. Maybe there's something that should be anticipated for the future. Maybe there's going to be a development someplace, and if you added a sidewalk project to that, you could kind of get ahead of the curve. So those are the kinds of things that we've been talking about. And then in addition to that, we're trying to collect, data, numbers as much as we can. So we've talked about direct benefits, meaning the households that are directly abutting the streets that we're talking about, and indirect benefits. You may not live on that street, but you may be on a side street that connects to that primary street. And you may get what we'll consider it an indirect benefit from a new sidewalk having been made on the primary street. So we're trying to take that into account as well. That's about it. Now, Andy, are you on the phone?
I am.
Okay.
There we go.
Andy gets credit for the artwork that is displayed in the front and in the back. So Andy, I'm going to turn this over to you and let you talk about the maps.
Okay. I want to also make sure I get credit for being on the call since 6 o'clock this evening.
You get extra credit.
Thank you. So anyway, nice to meet all of you. I've only been in town for 3 years, so we're relatively newcomers. My wife and I live at 30 Curtis Street. And when we moved in, we did a little stroll around the neighborhood with our dog and our grandchildren. And we immediately noticed that sidewalks were an important part of the town and was definitely something that needed to be improved upon. So I reached out to the select board and I found myself on this subcommittee now, which is a good thing.
No, teacher.
It's like no good deed goes unpunished, right? So anyway, so I'm very excited about this. This is, I think we put together some really good information, some good suggestions, and obviously, as Mark said, and I think Don and Sue have said as well, that we're looking for as much input from everybody else as possible. So one of the things that I thought would be, and I think we all agreed would be helpful, would be to actually illustrate where these roads are that currently have sidewalks, at least the major roads that have sidewalks, as well as what we're proposing, at least at this point, what we're proposing, and again, subject to everybody else's input, we'll be adding to this list. So we have in orange, you'll see in blue, first of all, if you're able to see the map, and I don't know if Sue, you can share this online or not.
You guys all see this from where you are?
Did you just send it to me, Andy?
No, I put it in the Dropbox a few days ago.
Okay. Okay.
So anyway, in the meantime, so as long as everybody can kind of see the maps that are in the room, I think there's two of them.
Yep, they see them.
Okay, so everything highlighted in blue, all the roads that are highlighted in blue are existing sidewalks. The ones that are highlighted in orange are at this point, proposed additional sidewalks on those streets or those segments or those portions of the street that do not currently have sidewalks. And then there's one that should be like in a greenish color, which is Stockbridge, which is currently underway. And it's just a portion of Stockbridge that would also be getting sidewalks, but that's already happening, or at least the engineering part of it's already happening. So as you can see, the additional streets that we're talking about putting in sidewalks, plus any others, but the ones that are currently on that map, would allow for a much better pathway and network of sidewalks around the perimeter of the town, as well as within the town itself as well, like the artery kind of streets. And would allow for much safer walking on those streets. These are generally streets that are higher volume and higher speeds that cars are traveling. And so, without going into detail on each one of those streets, I think you can probably see them now. And also using the chart that Mark handed out, you'll see which streets we're talking about. And I think that's pretty much it. Hopefully it gives you a good view and a good feeling of where these streets are and how they'd all interrelate with each other. And hopefully you agree that they're meaningful streets to have sidewalks created on as well. So I think that's about it, Sue, for me, at least at this point.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Apologies to people online. I did not share the map, but are we going to post that somewhere?
So for anybody that's online that might be wondering if they can get access to that, what we'll do is at the end of the meeting, we'll make sure we don't turn off the meeting until everybody online has a chance to give us their names and emails. I can share the file data with them for both these as well as the FAQs and things that we're handing out tonight.
Great. Okay. Do we want to go right into where to send input?
Yeah, we can cover that for everybody just to
Yeah.
make sure. And you should each have these in your FAQs. On the FAQs worksheet at the bottom third of that worksheet, there's essentially a quick cheat sheet form. So if you guys have input, you can literally tear that off tonight. You can email it in at a later date, or you can take pictures of it and hand it to people and have them simply send an email at another time. That's totally fine.
So there's a specific email address you'll see at the bottom.
So we're hoping, this is a midway point, call it, but we want more feedback. So in addition to everybody who was nice enough to come tonight and give feedback and listen and hear what we're doing, if you know other people that might be interested, spread that around. They can email us. We're openly taking all feedback we get until December 1st. And I would say in general, it doesn't mean it's some kind of harsh deadline as much as we're trying to deliver a product to the select board by January 1st. So after that point, it gets a little trickier to do all our homework, but certainly, the more we can get, the better.
Yeah, I've gotten some really great responses from the mothers, the Situate moms, like 4 or 5 different recommendations, which is exactly the feedback we're looking for. And I'd love to keep it coming. So spread the word more to all that group. It's really helpful. So it's like Mark had said, we can only do so much as 4 people. And so knowing all of these other problem areas and stuff like that brings it to our attention. And so we can take a look at it and include it, or, at least talk about it and schedule it.
Okay. Do we want to address any questions people have right now? And based on, you have some frequently asked, what we thought would be frequently asked questions, but we're happy to answer.
I just have a question on the map. I'm a West End resident.
Okay.
I see on the map that it says existing sidewalk on First Parish all the way basically down to Vernon Road. There's no sidewalk there currently, so I'm just curious if that's an error.
It could be.
Yeah, the sidewalk goes literally to, this is Vernon, 'cause I live on Grove Street. I'm Nicole Sanciolo, by the way.
Thank you.
How you
Um,
doing?
Did you send us an email?
I did,
Yes.
I did.
Yes.
So the sidewalk currently just goes to Pheasant Hill Drive. So that was,
Along the curve there.
it doesn't, yeah, it cuts off like, that Pheasant Hill is right here. So this whole area of the West End
So
basically.
back further, it
And
doesn't
there are some
exist.
very dangerous curves here. I wish it went all the way down here. It doesn't even go past Pheasant Hill.
Okay.
Yeah,
It ends right before Pheasant Hill.
which is the
Are you-
dangerous.
Sorry, sorry, are you referring to where the water department is?
No.
No,
No,
down
no.
First Parish.
West
On the
End.
west end.
After First Parish crosses over 3A
Past the tennis court at,
by Town Hall, right?
Yes,
Okay, I wasn't sure. I
past-
couldn't really hear, but I drove the entire
It's
First
right
Parish
next
road.
door.
so we'll double check that, thank you.
Yeah.
We'll take another look at that.
Appreciate that. That's true.
I did drive that entire road, and I think I saw a sidewalk the whole way.
No, there's no.
No? Okay.
Ask the mothers, we all know.
So, and certainly if you have questions, just, shout. If you look at the third page of the packet here tonight, the spreadsheet, those are the proposed projects. As Donna was saying, back from 2007 to about 2016, there were originally 19
Yeah, so it doesn't say
projects
20,
that
but
were
yeah.
identified. 9 of the 19 or 10 of the 19 got completed.
The ones that were in that report that are on this spreadsheet and have not been addressed are Arbor Way, Aberdeen, Beaver Dam Road, Chief Justice Cushing Highway, actually both of those, the ones that say 3A, 3A. Man Hill Road, Stockbridge, except that, as Andy said, that's in process, so we can probably take that off the list. Tilden Road, we're calling it Tilden Road Part 1. I know you guys are from Tilden Road.
Part 2.
Tilden Road Part 2. And then Vinyl Avenue. So those are the ones that were in 2007 and have yet to be addressed.
Within the list, what's the criteria? Obviously, we can't do them all, right? That's gonna be tough to do.
Don't give up yet.
Yeah, not giving up. But within this list and whatever else gets proposed, is there a framework or anything that you apply to what gets picked first or what gets prioritized? Is it, car throughput on the street or speed limit on the street, that type of criteria?
We're going to turn to the member of the select board.
Yeah.
So that's actually why we're here. That's why our committee has been reformed, properly, hopefully to get to that end point. Those projects are not in any order other than alphabetical right now, specifically because we wanted to get public input on what else might be out there that seems like a priority to other people in town prior to making those kinds of determinations. We have criteria that we're sort of playing with and working on. Mark mentioned just the sort of the more bold concepts of safety, connectivity, and accessibility. So, and you'll see when you look at the projects that are already on our list, right? And you can use a couple of these as an example right here. You already see sidewalk stretching all the way through and all the way through. but there's nothing here. So
Yeah, that's a great one.
If you didn't want to,
Right.
right? So if you wanted to be on a scooter with a 4-year-old, you'd have to go all the way around Front Street to get to the next section, right? Stockbridge Road is a great example. That's one of the reasons that it got prioritized by the town now and is being built right now. And so, so that connection is connecting the two previously built sections that stopped a third of the way. So that'll connect that as well. So you can kind of see, if you look at the orange that Andy was talking about, the concept, I think, is already there for that. Obviously, when you talk about something like Hatherley Road and you're talking about 7,000 plus, linear feet, you're talking about more than a mile of straight sidewalk. We've chopped it up tentatively on that spreadsheet, but that's simply a brainstorm right now. We know about Hatherley. We want Hatherley. We want to figure it out. Planning for the budget, and that's why we're not covering money tonight, but planning for the budget of 1 mile plus length, mile and a half almost length of road, I'll tell you right now, it's not going to happen in one budget season. And so you tend to have to start to think, how do you do that? I would probably say not this way, where you build the two opposite thirds and don't connect them. But at the same time, there are different ways to argue that. There are other factors we're considering, and we purposely didn't put those on or off of a list tonight because we haven't finalized those. We're still working through them. And that's, one of the reasons for feedback, and that's one of the reasons to sort of hear what people want. And then we have to marry that together to what's possible and what's probable, and then what's most effective. I think it would probably be fair to say that Donna would probably prefer to prioritize the roads near her neighborhood. I would probably prefer to prioritize. So it's easy for me to say, I live on 3A near the Rotary, right across from me. I have 280 feet before I get to the ball field. It'd be nice to be able to do that. But more importantly, we also need to think about, I represent all of you. I also represent 19,800 more people. So I'm trying to figure out, how do I take to the board a plan that this committee can put together that can consider everybody's needs, then put that into a matrix that makes sense. And then the last step, which we're not covering tonight, but I hope you guys can find obvious, is that we don't have $13 million in sidewalk budget in 2027, but we might have a piece. And so the question is, if we can outline this for the next 10 years, we can start chipping away at the highest priorities first, that serve the most people, that serve the most schools, that serve the most parks, that serve the most beaches, that serve them, that get the most for our tax money as a town for the most people as possible.
That's why the question you're asking is really an important one, because, about, is there a framework for setting priorities? And if we're now adding a time element to this, 10, 15, 20 years, it's going to be critical for some kind of a framework to be set up. So you'll see at the bottom of the FAQ list, we've got an open-ended question where when we say you got 50 words or less, tell us what other input you want to provide to us. If you could, any of you could provide some input on what a set of priorities ought to be, be very helpful.
I just imagine you're going to get many, little pet projects,
Sure.
but some of them might be more or less deserving on the safety basis or whatever you want to apply to it. So so you don't have people with pitchforks coming after you. Is there data points like car throughput on the road that come into factor there?
There are. There's speed limits. But we can use those. But we may miss something that is really important. So
I think we've got
fill in the
a
blanks.
really good foundation of criteria that has been developed over the years since 2007 and added to, because the town's been changing. Everything keeps changing, and it's going to continue to change. So what we're looking for is, additional ideas from you all and your neighbors and everything else as to what is causing a safety issue. New schools are being built. How are we going to connect to those? Different recreations when there's development in the north. All these different things. And so don't limit your ideas and thoughts to just your particular street areas. If you know of something that you see that should be considered, throw it into the pot, because, that there's no other way that we're going to really be able to get all of that information
You know, when I
ourselves.
saw the email today, I think it was from the West End.
Yes.
There were really a lot of great points there.
Yeah.
And just because we are on the committee doesn't mean that we don't want people to participate. And we also are looking for ideas. People have ideas about grants and funding, and we would love to hear all of that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
because it is going to be a big project.
Yeah.
All of them are big projects.
We are all residents of this town, and we all want the same thing. We want to be able to walk safely, our children to bike and, get around and everything else. We also know that we have a limited budget without the taxes going through the roof. So it's a timing thing. And so what's the biggest bang for the buck, given what's the most important for safety and all these other things. But all we're looking for now is, did we miss a criteria?
Yeah.
Did we miss something? And that's where you all come into play.
And to that end, I'll point to a couple of things. When we talk about evolution of the town, something specific that's changing, you just mentioned schools, right?
Yeah,
Most of
I
us-
see, at the detriment of the people that live right here, Cushing School is no longer going to be there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So on your list, you'll see
Something's gonna
Aberdeen
be
is
there.
number
Yeah.
one alphabetically, right?
It's probably gonna be, yeah.
And if you think about Aberdeen, it's the through road that goes past Cushing,
Yeah.
existing Cushing School, right? But in 2 years, that's no longer going to be a school. So when we go to the board and start really trying to prioritize, that's an evolution that's going to have a significant change in terms of the factors that we think about. There's going to be 300 less kids going there on a daily basis that are instead going to be going up to the new Hatherley Cushing School.
Right.
And that, that area also has a couple of questionable places that we want to add sidewalks. So how does that weigh? That's what we have to try and figure out. The other sort of thought process that I'll add, not to complicate things, is it on the bottom of the spreadsheet, the repair section?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
Yeah, one.
we haven't filled that in.
We only have one sidewalk that needs to be repaired.
Yeah, all of it.
Amazing.
What a great city.
Obviously, not every sidewalk is perfect, but some sidewalks have significant repairs that need to be made. Again, not to dive into money, because we won't, but the select board has this year appropriated a specific separate line item that will be a yearly line item going forward for $400,000 that is just about repairing existing sidewalks, not roadways, not potholes, sidewalks and bike paths. So if there are pieces of feedback about where you'd like to see new sidewalk that we don't currently have on our list, by all means, we want to know. Even if it's something that you think is really important, tell us again. That's extra data points of people that are interested. But if you have pieces of sidewalk that specifically, there is a 15-foot sidewalk, section of sidewalk on some road that's just destroyed, and we didn't figure that out yet. It's hard to monitor every single sidewalk in town on a consistent basis. Potholes tend to get, sent to DPW and highway pretty quickly, because people hit them, they're grumpy about it, they call like that day, that week. The third time they hit it in their neighborhood, they're calling. But sidewalks tend to slip by for a while, possibly because people don't know if there's anything that they can do about it. But we actually now have a fund for that purpose. Sometimes that $400,000 will get used on a little here, a little here, a little here. But sometimes we'll have a year where we don't have a lot on our list to do. If that's the case, $400,000 is not it's not Hatherley Road, but we may be able to knock off one project with that. So depending on the year, depending on the cycle, we have play there at the committee level, at the select board level, and the DPW level to make change happen. And that's actually been set aside now, which means we're not scrambling for, crossing our fingers and hoping it doesn't snow so that we have enough in the salt budget to throw a little sidewalk down. Right? So things to just know.
I have two questions. One, you just triggered for what about like the capital budget? Because that's usually separate from the operating budget. Have there been opportunities or thought to be putting some of this towards in the capital side?
They do.
Okay.
So before a sidewalk gets built,
Yeah.
it does go to capital.
Okay.
So before this got started at Stockbridge to finish that link, it's already been through advisory, it's already been through capital, it's already been to CPC if it's applicable. It's already gone through the gamut. So
Okay.
none of these projects on your list will get built before they come to pretty much every department.
Mhm.
We're just looking to put this literal roadmap in front of the town so that they have a document to work from when they start the next 2 or 3 projects.
Okay. And then secondly, thinking about grumpy people, how do
We don't have-
you?
we don't have ducks for this.
I am thrilled to see my road on the list. But I wonder, like, in conversations and in plugging this momentum, like, what happens if someone's not happy with, like, is it eminent domain? Like, how is their yard or their frontage treated if they are on the list?
Sure, it's a great question. So, very simply put, there is no eminent domain that would apply to sidewalks in Situate. Trying to think of an exception to that. I can't at the moment. I don't think sidewalks would rise to the level of eminent domain where we're going to look as a town to take someone's property. I think it's a terrible idea for my reelection campaign. But to be serious, just about every road-facing property in the town, you don't own a piece of that grass or dirt or whatever next to the pavement. That is already owned by the town. So the town weighs, and if you look at the bigger the road, the more space around it. So I'm on Route 3A. I believe it's 16 full feet on both sides of the road belong to the state, not even Situate. That's a good chunk of my front yard that doesn't belong to me. So if the state decided to come in and do something, my garden and my rock wall, I have no say whatsoever. Now, if you look at the existing Stockbridge Road, just because I've run it and biked it so many times, the existing sidewalk over there, when it did get built about 7 years ago, it took out a lot of people's rock walls, gardens, and things. The town worked with the residents to rebuild a number of those rock walls, give them different replantings if they had lost plantings, et cetera. They weren't going to replace an 80-year-old oak tree, but if you had, 2 little shrubs, they probably gave you a budget to go down to Kennedy's and get 2 little shrubs. If you had a rock wall that had to get knocked down and pushed back, there were multiple properties where they actually took the time in the budget to spend money to get those rock walls either rebuilt or help the residents reconfigure. Okay. So that does happen. It is a consideration, but it's, and I say this nicely, it's more of a courtesy than it is a demand because it's not technically the property. Nowhere in town that I know of at the moment on our current list are any of the proposed sidewalks going to run into private property ownership.
Right.
That being said, there are things that do get in the way that are big questions. So the obvious ones are if you already have a big guardrail on the side of the road, those are very expensive to dig up and reconfigure. If you already have telephone poles on one side of the road, it's going to be extremely expensive and very difficult to justify sidewalk on the same side if you have to move the poles. Now, you might be able to go behind the poles. You might be able to move 1 pole out of 50, but you're not moving 50 poles for a sidewalk because it would probably quadruple the price of the entire project. National Grid is not very friendly about moving.
Just to interrupt for just a second, as a non-elected person, you too and Andy as well, every time this subject comes up in our discussions, we're very cognizant because the shoe fits our foot too. We're cognizant of people, it may belong to the town, but we've beautified those areas. We've put fences up. Everything that Nico said, we're aware of that too. We don't own that property, but the approach that you're talking about that's what has to happen. There needs to be some kind of conversation, discussion, see what kind of mitigation can go on. So we're trying to represent that because it's important to us as well.
And it should be important to everybody to try and work together. So when a sidewalk project comes up, if we're 4 years down the road and we're on number 3, and that comes up, what's number 3?
Branch Street.
Branch Street. So when we get to Branch Street, let's say it's in order and that's the one that's next and the town says this is the one, it actually fits in the available budget timeline that we have for the next 2-year cycle, we're gonna build it. Well, we still have to go to engineering and DPW and talk about, okay, well, what exists there now, right? There's actually 822 large trees on that section. What's number 4? Right? So those are the kinds of things that we're looking at. We are not going to be deciding what budgets to play with. And that's kind of nice for our committee, and I hope nice for the residents, because what we really want to do is we want to say it doesn't matter whether there's electrical there or whether there's a guardrail, whether there's a creek underneath it or whether there's, what have you. What we want to know is what's going to give the most accessibility and the most safety to the most people in the most, useful places and connect the most things together. Once we have that list prioritized and whatever variables else that we put into that equation, once we turn that list over, then it will go to the town and DPW and highway and engineering and planning and conservation and all these other departments. They already do a lot of legwork to do the homework when it comes time to look at those. So I can tell you for sure, we're going to prioritize it, but over a 10-year span, I'd be willing to bet it's not going to go number 1, number 2, number 3,
Sure.
number 4. But the list will still very likely stay the same, because the whole point of our efforts is to put a lasting blueprint together. You may skip one, but you're not skipping it forever. You're just trying to figure out how to slot it into a larger budgetary multi-year season.
Can we see if there are any questions or
I
comments? on the
actually
line?
have one person that raised her hand, Julia Finch. I don't know if
Does
she
she know how to
unmute.
unmute herself?
I've asked her to unmute, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah,
So-
we weren't allowed to unmute ourselves, so
Yeah.
thank you for letting me. In the chat, I know you had asked a question. The chat's disabled, so we also can't type anything in.
Yeah, okay, so everybody, if you have a question, put your hand up in the icon, yeah.
The
And-
only question I really had, and this has all been fabulous, was how do we provide feedback?
So if you would please stay on the meeting at the end when we finish, I'm going to make sure that I take emails from everybody online that doesn't have access to our data sheets today. And I
Okay.
will forward all the data I handed out tonight, as well as the feedback form.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Thanks, Julia.
And also, I should note that Barry from EDC is on the line here, and he also suggested that we attach all of our things to the EDC page on the town website.
And we
So
can
we'll
do that as well.
Yep. I
Any
don't
other online
see
questions?
anyone else at the moment.
Yeah, the one thing that we really have to be cognizant of is making sure that what we're doing here tonight and what hopefully gets approved going forward, and we start this whole mechanism of working towards constructing, is that, again, as we all agreed, things change. And so this has to be a living, evolving type of project to make sure that everything that is in the priority remains the same or has to be adjusted or something new comes in. So it's not one and done. It's a constant monitoring of this thing so that it really stays relevant.
I have an additional request of you all, both in the room and in the virtual room. You all have neighbors and relatives and friends who live here in town. We would be really tickled if you would share, if you're having conversations or dinner with somebody or whatever. Hey, did you hear about this subcommittee? And I went to the meeting and here's what they talked about, and they're asking for input. You can help us get the word around.
As well as if you come to the senior center separately, if you go to a PTO meeting, we've tried starting reaching out to people, but like Donna said, it's been a lot of work and a short amount of time we're trying to do it in. If we aren't able to turn something around in the January time period because of town meeting and other things, we pretty much have to go an entire year to bother kind of cycling this forward. So that's why we're that's why there's a compressed time frame here.
Yeah.
We're trying to get at least something. We can always, we can always go, oh, did nobody put, Front Street on there? Oh, I forgot about Front Street.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not that it can never be amended. It's a living document. It's a great way to
Right.
say it. But we were really proud of the work this committee is doing, and I want to make sure that I take that back to the select board and the EDC and push it forward, and not just have a bunch of paper flying around.
Okay.
Any other questions from anybody?
I don't see any online.
Especially on repairs. That's the hardest thing for us you'll be able to monitor or really
Unless
see.
you walk that road.
Unless you walk the
Yeah.
road. So be sure and send us all your suggestions for repairs, because that list has to be beefed up, because you've got to spend the money.
There is something to that. That just like, I always refer back to Dilbert, right? I mean, if we have a $400,000 budget and we don't spend it, it basically ends up kicking back into the free cash section of town. And I'll tell you that, especially in a year like this, when budgets are tight and we're just trying to figure out how to make sure we don't have to lay anybody off in town and all those types of intense questions, as important to me as sidewalks are, if we have money left over, I'm going to make sure that the teachers are covered and the police are covered and all sorts of other things are covered. So, but if we can find reasons to use it, that's what it is there for. So if you know that there's a small section of something, or if you know that there used to be a ramp somewhere, or that there is no ramp that, needs to exist, those kinds of things are important to us. That's what that separate budget is for. It's kind of out of the purview of what we're trying to structure for the town, but it's still important. Our committee's not handling it, but the bike committee is looking at, crosswalks, right? We're looking at where to put crosswalks that don't exist. We're looking at where to repaint crosswalks that do exist. We're looking at, crosswalks that exist that don't have a handicap ramp at the end of them. So 1 square of ramp that's literally 6 by 6 costs $1,200, and that's assuming you're already there. So if you don't have something happening, it's probably more like $3,000. So that's 6 feet, right? Poof. So, but $400,000 will go a long way if we find out we want to build 7 ramps next year. And that's something that's outside of having to go through a long process. That's actually a lot easier for the DPW to simply schedule for their
And Nico,
folks.
can I also add that I wouldn't be shy about making suggestions of what you think is a repair, because it could be, we've seen some sidewalks that are this wide and go like this and roots and all of that. I would submit them for a repair side, because they might be able to do it. And if it's not absolutely enormous and falls within the.
And that's the reason Curtis Street is on there as a repair and not as a new construction sidewalk. There is a sidewalk on Curtis Street. It's too thin. It's not ADA compliant. Doesn't have a granite curb. It's not flat. It's functional if you're just walking a dog up the road, but it's pretty tricky if you're riding a scooter. You certainly don't want to walk 2 or 3 people across. So that's an existing sidewalk. We'd love to have the budget to completely, basically gut it and redo it. A lot of people would say, well, that kind of sounds like a whole new sidewalk. Yeah, but we already have one, so we're calling it a repair.
Nico, can you explain how we talked about the granite curb versus the berm?
Cape
Cod berm.
Yeah.
Cape Cod.
Sure. So if anybody doesn't know, a granite curb is a 90-degree block angle curb that's very hard. You cannot roll your car up over it easily. You certainly can't roll your bike up over it easily. So they're designed for ADA compliant purposes. They're to be flat, and they're also designed as a hard stop to prevent cars from going up on a sidewalk and hitting a kid. The upside downside of that is if you're riding a bicycle, you can roll off a Cape Cod berm, which is the blacktop that just looks like it's slightly angled off of the roadway. You can roll up, you can roll down. Cape Cod berms don't prevent teenagers and, your 10 to 14-year-olds from thinking they can just go up and down, which makes them a hazard to cars and a hazard to themselves. But if you think about the new sidewalk coming off of Route 3A in Cohasset that's coming around the curve and all that mess of construction right now, eventually when they're finished, that will have sidewalk coming down 3A and turning onto Gannett Road and continuing all the way until the existing sidewalk on Gannett Road. So it'll connect 3A to North Situate and vice versa, which is nice. But because of the state road side of it, state roads don't do Cape Cod berm anymore. If they're going to have a sidewalk, it's going to have a 90-degree granite curb on it. The trick with that is if I have a full-sized adult biker with a helmet riding on the street like they're supposed to, and they're riding up against a sharp granite curb, if a car decides to do something stupid, there's nowhere for them to escape because they're going to tip over. If you have Cape Cod berm, like on the Driftway, where there's a bike path, which is not a sidewalk, if you're in danger, you just roll onto the grass, right? You may not be happy in tiny tires, but at least you didn't crash. So there are ups and downs to both of those things. They're
Literally.
constantly, yes, and they're constantly balanced. But just to explain the differences, there are reasons for both. And to that point, a bike path and a sidewalk are not the same. Every road we're currently talking about would probably be considered a sidewalk, meaning it's going to be a 4-foot wide, ADA compliant, granite curbed, concrete piece of run. Bike paths are usually going to be paved. They're usually going to have a spacer of grass or gravel or dirt in between the paved surface of the bike path and the paved surface of road. There's usually going to be a good 5 to 7 feet of space so that pedestrians are safe from a sleepy driver or anything else. So those are kinds of the differences. So your typical bike path is the Driftway down past the bike, the dog park and going to the Rotary. The typical sidewalk is going to be your cut concrete sectioned granite curb.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else?
One thing when we talk about what's a repair, one of the things that I think is probably most destructive to the sidewalks is when they pave the road, they lose the grade difference between the sidewalk and the roadway. So is the DPW cognizant of that? Are they doing anything when they pave a road to raise the sidewalk up or seat the granite curb or anything?
It's a good point. To pick an example, the four-way stop, Man Hill Road, Captain Pierce, and Vinyl and Tilden. Are you familiar? You're familiar with that? They, like within the last 2 years, they repaved those roads and they redid the sidewalks with the granite curb. So they did pay attention to that and they did set the elevations the way,
Well, I'm thinking, also recently repaved with Beaver Dam and Brook Street.
Yeah.
They added a layer of asphalt to the road and now it's level with the sidewalk, which is kind of defeats the whole purpose, right? So, I don't know if they're considering
your point's a good point. It's well taken. I think to be blunt, I think that it comes down to economics because on average, if you have a decent roadway, you may come by with just an overcoat layer of pavement because you don't have to dig it up. You don't have to re-engineer it. All you're doing is coming in with a truck and pouring hot asphalt down and rolling it. It's a lot cheaper to do that if the roadway underneath is still stable enough. If the roadway is not stable, or if you have to make major changes, then you're going to rip up the road. And if you do, the engineering today is going to reset the heights. But 10 years ago, I would bet there wasn't the types of engineering involved. There's a good and bad to that. The cost is a lot higher, but the end product is better.
Also, a good/bad example of the poles being in the wrong place.
Everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. We've had this conversation too. It's difficult when they build a sidewalk and it's it's nearly impossible to say push a carriage or ride a bike.
Jericho Road is.
Jericho,
a
that's-
hilarious
Yeah.
example.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
walk the pole down
So,
there.
so keeping those in mind when you're thinking about, where you'd like to see a sidewalk. Because Nico's right, the cost of replacing or moving those poles is nearly impossible.
And so Jericho Road's probably a good example. I wasn't in the conversation when Jericho Road sidewalk was built. I would guess that when those discussions came up, they made a determination that the sidewalk needed to be on the ocean side of the road for multiple reasons. Probably most importantly because of the butter side of the equation. If it was on most of the houses, right, are on the other side of the road, all the way from the lights, all the way down to the lighthouse. If you put it on that side of the road, you'd be tearing up people's lawns, and then people don't have a lot of lawn space there. And there's probably, I'm going to guess, 50, 60 homes on that side of the road between that whole stretch. On the other side, you don't have any houses on that until you get past Museum Beach. So there's probably only 12 houses on that side. So disturbance of private property was probably of primary concern to the committees that talked about that decision. And they probably looked at it and said, we're not going to have the budget to move all the poles that are not on, because they probably came in 20 years before that and said, well, let's not bother the people, let's put all the poles on the ocean side, thinking we won't have any problems with that someday. And then you put a sidewalk in and you don't have the budget. So then the question becomes, do you build a sidewalk and give people access and you have 6 poles in the way? Or do you not build a sidewalk? Because we're not going to be able to move all the poles.
Plus, you've all seen roads in town that kind of play hopscotch.
Mhm.
They go
As I
20
was
feet with a
thinking about-
sidewalk, and then there's a crosswalk, and
Mhm.
it jumps across the street, and then it comes back 50 feet later.
Which you
So-
try to avoid,
Right.
but sometimes you can't
But it's an
for all
accommodation.
sorts of reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And there's a lot
All
of
good points.
conservation in Situate. Hadley Road alone, you have to go over the pond.
on the river.
There's
yeah.
quite twice. So there's quite a lot of engineering that would have to be done, which is one of the reasons we thought it would be better to break up those that
Phases.
road. Yeah. So, how about anything else? Does anybody here have anything else or questions?
I probably a stupid question, but is this something that we would have to vote on in town meeting, a budget for is that in January you submit your proposal to the select board and then we would be voting as a town on this, or
So you're talking about this sort of
like all?
blueprint.
Yeah, right, yeah.
No, there's no reason that the town as a whole would have to vote on the blueprint.
Great.
But it is important to me that it goes through a public forum, that it goes back to EDC, that it then comes to select board. And before the select board votes to sort of adopt a blueprint, think of it like a master plan, right? If this becomes our sidewalk master plan, it's important to me, and I think all of us on the board, that it's going to go through a number of other steps. It's going to go through all the town departments to review, give more commentary. So it's not as though December 1st we get, okay, good, we only got 4 pieces of feedback, let's just push those off. I like my list, and then we're just going to give it to them and just say, this is it. It's going to go through a number of other steps before it becomes sort of the official roadmap, if you will. But it doesn't have to be publicly voted by the whole town. That being said, in 2027, when Aberdeen stays in number 1 slot and we decide that we have enough money to do 2,600 feet of Aberdeen, that would have to go through advisory and capital planning before it comes to a vote at town meeting and before it gets built. Stockbridge went through a vote long ago and it never got finished and was appropriated and just never got to the we have money stage. So that's why you didn't hear about it on Monday night or 6 months ago.
You just reminded me, I meant to say, this list, alphabetical order. It's
Yeah,
not
I said that.
by priority.
Okay.
If there aren't other questions, I mean, that's most of the stuff we wanted to cover tonight,
Yeah.
but anybody who has something that's not on this sheet already, please make sure that we write it down tonight, even before you submit something, if you wish to submit something. If you're already interested on a street that is on our spreadsheet, please let us know that so that we have, it's always helpful to
I got
say,
some highlighters.
somebody took the time to do the extra work to come to the committee in the open forum and give feedback, and they were really interested in,
And, the 2007 study that we found, or Donna found, it was very helpful,
Very.
because they put a lot of work into it, and
It's on the town website if you're
Yeah.
curious about it.
It gives you a
developed-
footprint to work off
yeah,
of.
they developed the criteria. Things actually got done. Took a while, but it did happen.
Yeah.
So,
No, that was very
Yeah.
well done.
Maybe instead of providing, maybe when we send an email, we can say, I was at the.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
it may, rather than,
Either way.
keeping your
Right.
time to like all line up to tell you our
Yeah.
priorities, but.
He doesn't
Um,
mind. He
No.
But
Absolutely.
I have to go put my kids to bed, so I actually have to go.
So
But I will.
please send us some input.
But I'm
emails on
happy
that.
to just, give, I was there.
I appreciate you being here.
Thank
We-
you
we
very
do.
much.
Yes.
Andy, did you have anything before we kind of shut down the meeting?
Thank
No, I
you
think
so
we're good. I
much.
think
Thank
that,
you very much, and tell your daughter, good work. Getting-
All right.
I think
Go ahead,
Sue was able to share the map, while
Well
people were
said,
talking,
actually.
right? So
Yeah.
I guess we could share it again if you'd like, but I think, this was all good. Thank you.
Great.
So thank you very much for being here.
Yes.
If you guys have input for us tonight, please just come on up. If anybody's online, I think, Seth, are you there? Can we stop recording without losing the people online?
Sure can.